February 1934, a frozen river on the Soviet-Finnish border. 3 men crawl across cracking ice, freedom just 30 meters away. Then the ice beneath the youngest one shatters. He plunges into black water. The current starts dragging him under. But here's what makes no sense. The skis abandoned on the Soviet bank? Issued by the Gulag? The extra strength in the older man's arms as he lunges for his drowning son? Built from rations the prison commandant personally approved. These aren't ordinary fugitives. They're the organizers of their death camp's first Olympic Games. 3 weeks earlier, Ivan Solonevich was a skeleton with 90 days to live. Then he walked into a commandant's office and pitched something insane, an Olympic competition for prisoners. The Soviets didn't execute it. They gave him everything: food, training, equipment, and a signed pass to leave camp. They thought they were getting propaganda. They didn't realize they were handing a condemned man the keys to his own escape. Now Ivan's son is slipping underwater. Armed patrols are meters away, and behind them, a forest that's killed more escapees than firing squads. What made the Soviets arm their own prisoner? And will anyone survive this crossing alive? Winter 1933. 60 miles south of the Arctic Circle, the White Sea-Baltic Canal project devours men like firewood. This isn't a prison with bars and bunks. It's a 227-kilometer construction site built on prisoner corpses. Over 100,000 captives hack at permafrost from dawn to midnight, dredging Stalin's new shipping canal almost entirely by hand. The state refuses to waste machinery on expendable labor. Wheelbarrows and pickaxes must suffice where other countries would deploy steam shovels and dynamite. The workday stretches 14 hours in temperatures that plunge to -40. The reward: a bowl of watery kasha and 300 grams of black bread, roughly 1,200 calories to fuel backbreaking labor that burns 3 times that amount. Life expectancy here is measured in weeks. Prisoners call it the meat grinder because you enter as a man and leave as fertilizer. The canal's foundations contain an estimated 25,000 bodies, workers buried in the very earth they excavated. Ivan Solonevich arrives at this hellscape in shackles, stepping off a cattle car into air that burns his nostrils. He's not a typical convict. Before his arrest, Ivan was a celebrity, a champion weightlifter, a nationally syndicated sports journalist, and a man who could deadlift 400 pounds. His crime? Refusing to write Soviet propaganda and attempting to flee the workers' paradise one too many times. The secret police grew tired of his defiance, but they didn't stop at Ivan. His son Yuri, 23, and his brother Boris, 39, were dragged into this frozen hell alongside him, each condemned for the crime of sharing blood with an enemy of the state. The moment Ivan surveys the camp, he does the grim arithmetic. Brute strength won't save him here. Even an ox starves on 300 grams of bread a day. At the current pace, shoveling frozen earth for 14 hours, eating barely enough to survive 8, he calculates he has 90 days before his muscles waste to nothing and his heart gives out. His son Yuri is already coughing blood. Boris can barely stand after his shifts. The clock is ticking on all 3 Solonevich men, and the second hand moves faster every day. By the second week, Ivan's legendary muscles are visibly shrinking. The man who once hoisted Olympic barbells now struggles to lift a shovel over his shoulder. But Ivan isn't just muscle. Shivering in a half-frozen barrack at night, he watches guards tally production quotas and scribble reports to Moscow. He notices something peculiar. The commandant cares less about actually finishing the canal and more about looking good on paper. Every week, headquarters demands proof that prisoners are being re-educated into model Soviet citizens. Show trials, propaganda lectures, organized sports events, all staged theater to mask the mass graves multiplying outside the wire. That's the crack in the armor Ivan's been hunting. In a system designed to break men, he spots a vulnerability designed to be exploited. He knows the officials have flagged his file. A champion athlete represents a propaganda opportunity on legs. If he plays this right, his fame might transform from a curse into a skeleton key. But first, he'll have to walk into the lion's den and convince a man who controls his life and death to hand him the tools for escape. One wrong word, One flicker of suspicion, and Ivan won't live to see another sunrise. What exactly is he planning to propose, and why would any commandant be foolish enough to agree? An armed guard escorts Ivan into the commandant's office. The room smells of tobacco and stale paper. Behind a cluttered desk, a man with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent scowl peers at this unexpected visitor. Ivan stands at attention, every muscle tensed beneath his threadbare uniform. He's about to pitch a miracle to a man who sentences people to death before breakfast. The commandant flips through Ivan's file, one eyebrow climbing. A famous athlete in his camp. Interesting. "You asked to see me, Solonevich," he growls. "This better be worth my time." Ivan swallows the fear climbing his throat. "Comrade Commandant, I request permission to organize a Spartakiad, an Olympic-style sports competition for the prisoners." The commandant's cigarette freezes midair. A slow smirk twists his lips. "Sports? In a labor camp? You can barely lift your shovel and you want to throw javelins?" Ivan doesn't flinch. He's rehearsed this moment 100 times in his head. "Not games, sir. A Spartakiad, a showcase of socialist physical culture. Healthy competition to inspire the workforce. Well-fed, motivated prisoners exceed their quotas. Imagine reporting to Moscow that productivity increased 20% because of Soviet sportsmanship. You'd be the first commandant in the Gulag system to achieve re-education through athletics." The smirk fades. The commandant leans forward, fingers drumming the desk. Boosted quotas, Moscow's approval, maybe even a commendation from Stalin's inspectors. Ivan is speaking his language now, not athletics, but ambition. Ivan lays out his plan with precision. A grand intra-camp tournament in 30 days. Prisoners from every barrack will train and compete in skiing, running, and weightlifting. A showcase of rehabilitation through physical culture. But to stage this spectacle, Ivan needs resources. He requests freedom of movement throughout the camp to recruit the best athletes from each work brigade. He requests Class 1 food rations, usually reserved for prisoners who exceed quotas, to build up his competitors. And he requests equipment, skis, boots, and compasses for a cross-country ski race across the terrain surrounding the camp. The commandant's eyes narrow. Extra rations for criminals? Equipment that could be used to escape? His instinct screams to throw this fool into the punishment cells for impudence, or worse, to make an example that would discourage other prisoners from wasting his time. But Ivan keeps pushing the one button that matters: metrics. A well-fed athletic team will dig more canal than a starving one. A camp Spartakiad will generate propaganda photographs for headquarters. Smiling prisoners engaged in healthy socialist competition. Proof that the re-education program is transforming enemies of the state into productive Soviet citizens. It's an innovation in prisoner management that could launch the commandant's career to Moscow, away from this frozen wasteland. The silence stretches. Ivan can hear his own heartbeat. Finally, the commandant barks to a guard. "Get this man whatever he needs. We'll hold our Spartakiad in 1 month." Ivan nods respectfully and exits the office, his face betraying nothing. Inside, his mind is racing. He just convinced a Soviet official to hand him skis, compasses, extra food, and authorized movement outside the camp perimeter. Everything required for an escape. But there's a problem Ivan hasn't mentioned to anyone. 1 month isn't enough time to regain the strength he's lost. He's down 30 pounds from starvation. His son Yuri is weaker still. To survive the journey they're planning, they'll need to recover months of muscle wasting in just 30 days. Can 3 starving men rebuild their bodies fast enough to outrun the Soviet state? And what happens when the Gulag realizes its prized athletes have vanished into the wilderness they were supposed to be mapping? For the next 4 weeks, Ivan Solonevich runs 2 operations simultaneously. On the surface, he's the enthusiastic organizer of the camp's first Spartakiad, recruiting athletes, scheduling events, and reporting progress to the commandant with the eagerness of a true believer. Beneath that mask, he's engineering a breakout that exploits every resource the Gulag hands him. The Class 1 rations make the difference between death and survival. Where standard prisoners receive 300 grams of bread, Ivan and his athletes now receive 700 grams plus supplemental protein, fish, occasional meat, even sugar cubes that taste like diamonds on their tongues. It's still starvation rations by free world standards, but in the Gulag economy, it's a feast that prisoners would murder for. Ivan watches his strength return pound by pound, tracking his progress by how many shovelfuls he can lift before his arms shake. Boris's hands stop trembling. Yuri's bloody cough subsides. Their bodies are rebuilding themselves just fast enough, but it's a race against the calendar that Ivan isn't certain they'll win. The training serves double duty. Ivan drills his athletes in skiing technique, but he's really drilling himself, Boris, and Yuri for the 200-kilometer journey to Finland. Every practice run outside the wire becomes a reconnaissance mission. Ivan memorizes landmarks, studies the terrain, notes where the forest thickens, and where the snow lies deepest. He sketches crude maps at night, hiding them inside his mattress straw. The guards see a dedicated coach pushing his team to glory. They don't see a man plotting their humiliation. The most audacious element is the ski race route. Ivan convinces the commandant that a proper Spartakiad needs a cross-country event through the surrounding taiga. To set up the course, Ivan argues, he'll need a day pass to scout and mark the trail. The commandant hesitates. Letting prisoners outside the wire unsupervised is unheard of. But Ivan has spent weeks building trust. His Spartakiad preparations have generated glowing memos to Moscow. The commandant's superiors are already praising his innovative approach to re-education. Denying Ivan now would raise questions about why the program is suddenly stalling. After days of lobbying, the commandant signs a special authorization, document number 771, as Ivan will later remember it. Ivan Solonevich and 2 assistants, his brother Boris and son Yuri, are permitted to leave camp for up to 4 hours to mark the ski race course. 4 hours. 240 minutes. That's their entire window. Any longer, and they'll be declared escaped prisoners. Armed search parties will flood the forest within the hour. NKVD officers will telegram every checkpoint between the camp and the Finnish border. Dogs trained to track human scent through blizzards will be unleashed. The Green Guillotine will have company, and this time it will be searching specifically for 3 men who know too much to be recaptured alive. The night before their scouting trip, the 3 men don't sleep. They pack hoarded bread crusts and dried fish into hidden pouches sewn inside their coats. They check their compasses, the same compasses the Gulag provided for the ski race. They silently say goodbye to fellow prisoners who helped them without knowing the full plan. By dawn, Ivan still looks gaunt, but his eyes burn with something the Gulag couldn't extinguish. Under a brilliant blue winter sky, Ivan, Boris, and Yuri strap on their skis at the main gate. A few guards shake their heads as the trio waves cheerfully and glides beyond the wire. Nobody shouts. Nobody shoots. For 1 full minute, the fugitives ski in plain view, hearts slamming against their ribs. Then they crest a small ridge, and the camp vanishes behind them. Ivan speaks 1 word. Go. They kick forward, faster and faster, disappearing like phantoms into the endless white. The clock has started. 4 hours until the Gulag realizes its star athletes aren't coming back. 4 hours until every soldier in the region begins hunting them. But 4 hours is also a significant head start, if they use every second. How far can 3 weakened men travel before the Soviet machine catches up? And what awaits them in a forest that's killed more escapees than firing squads? For the first hour, adrenaline fuels everything. The air is knife cold, slicing their lungs with each gulp, but the 3 Solonevich men ski hard, putting kilometer after kilometer between themselves and the camp. Their bodies remember the training, the fake Olympics paying off in real survival. At first, it almost feels like freedom. Then the Karelian taiga reminds them it answers to no government. Somewhere behind them, faintly carried on the wind, comes the wail of a siren. The 4-hour window has slammed shut. Back at the camp, guards are discovering the truth. The prized athletes vanished into the wilderness and never looked back. Within the hour, armed search parties with dogs will be crashing through this same forest, following their ski tracks. The fugitives pick up speed until their knees scream and their shoulders burn. Rest means death now. Night falls. The temperature plummets to -30 Celsius, cold enough to freeze exposed skin solid in under 10 minutes. Sweat trapped in their clothing crystallizes, turning their coats into icy shells that crackle with every movement. They ski through the darkness by starlight, navigating by the North Star and Ivan's compass, praying the needle keeps pointing true. Sleep comes in desperate 10-minute collapses against tree trunks before the cold gnaws through their exhaustion and forces them moving again. On the second night, frostbite begins claiming their extremities. Toes go numb first, then fingers turn waxy and white. Boris's left ear freezes solid. He doesn't even notice until Yuri points it out. But stopping means dying, so they push forward. 2 days, 3 days. Rationing crumbs of stolen bread until the crumbs run out, chewing ice for hydration, watching their bodies cannibalize muscle tissue for fuel. On the third night, across the stillness, they hear it, the distant baying of hounds. The Gulag's hunting party hasn't given up. Those dogs are maybe 6 hours behind, maybe less. Fear gives their exhausted legs one last burst of speed. By the 5th day, something is wrong. Ivan pulls out the compass to check their bearing, and his stomach drops. The needle is spinning in lazy circles, pointing everywhere and nowhere. He taps it, shakes it. Nothing. Either the compass broke from the cold, or the iron-rich bedrock of Karelia has scrambled its magnetic field. Boris squints at the pale sun hanging low on the horizon. Are we still going west? Ivan doesn't answer. The truth is, they've been skiing through a white maze for 5 days, and now they have no way to confirm direction. For all they know, they've been traveling in circles, burning calories they can't replace, marching toward the same death they fled. A creeping horror fills him. Now he understands why prisoners call this place the Green Guillotine. The forest doesn't need guards or bullets. It executes through exhaustion, cold, and confusion. Out here, the land itself is Stalin's most reliable warden. Another day passes. Their pace slows to a stumble. Yuri's cheekbones jut from his face like knife blades beneath papery skin. Boris's frost-covered beard makes him look like a walking corpse from a folk tale. The last of the food vanished 2 days ago. Their stomachs have collapsed into hollow voids that gnaw at their spines, and hallucinations flicker at the edges of their vision like northern lights made of fever dreams. Ivan imagines he hears music at one point, a warm cello note drifting between the pines, his mother's favorite song from decades ago. He knows it's his mind breaking down, consuming its own memories for comfort. But then a new sound cuts through the delirium, a low, constant rush. Water, moving water. The forest thins ahead. The 3 men stumble onto the banks of a wide river, its surface a chaotic mosaic of ice chunks and black rushing current. Ivan recognizes it from the maps he studied during those sleepless nights of planning. This is the border river, the final barrier between Soviet Karelia and Finnish territory. Freedom flows on the opposite bank, close enough that a strong man could throw a stone and hit free soil. But hope curdles into dread the moment he studies the crossing. The river isn't frozen solid. Sheets of ice bob in furious current, with only treacherous patches bridging the gaps. One misstep into that water means instant hypothermia and a body swept beneath the ice. And there's another problem. Ivan spots fresh ski tracks along the far bank. He signals Boris and Yuri to drop flat behind a snowdrift. Peering out, he sees footprints and cigarette butts. Soviet border guards have anticipated this crossing point. They're patrolling the opposite shore, waiting for exactly this moment. Ivan's mind races through impossible options. Behind them, the Gulag's hunting dogs are closing the gap, maybe hours away. Ahead, armed soldiers guard a river that wants to kill them. They're caught between the hammer and the anvil, with no food, almost no strength, and no obvious way forward. Night falls on the endless forest, and 3 men lie in the snow, hearts pounding, wondering if they've survived everything, only to die within sight of freedom. What move is left when both directions mean death? They wait until after midnight, when the patrol's campfire across the river dims to embers. This is their only window. Ivan gestures silently, downstream. The three men crawl through the snow along the Soviet bank, putting distance between themselves and those fresh guard tracks. At a bend where the river narrows slightly, they stop. The ice here looks marginally thicker, or maybe that's just desperate hope. Either way, it's now or never. Ivan signals for Boris and Yuri to hold back. He steps onto the ice first, dropping to his belly to spread his weight across the largest possible surface. The ice groans beneath him but doesn't crack. Inch by inch, he slithers forward, using his elbows to propel himself like a seal. The frozen river creaks and pops with every movement. Halfway across, an ominous crack rends the silence. Without hesitating, Ivan rolls onto his back, distributing his 200 pounds more evenly. The cracking stops. He motions for the others to follow his exact path, staying flat, staying slow. Boris comes next, sliding on his stomach with agonizing patience. Then Yuri. Each man moves in a straight line, hearts suspended in their throats, the river's black current gurgling inches beneath the cloudy ice. 3 meters from the far shore, the ice beneath Yuri shatters with a sound like breaking bone. He plunges waist-deep into water so cold it steals his breath instantly. His legs begin sweeping toward the current beneath the ice shelf. Ivan lunges without thinking. His frost-damaged hand catches the collar of Yuri's coat, just as the current begins dragging the young man under. Summoning strength he no longer believed he possessed, Ivan hauls backward. Boris grabs Yuri's other arm. Together they drag him coughing and convulsing onto the far bank. Yuri's lower body is soaked and already beginning to freeze solid. But he's breathing. They made it. They're on the western shore. For a long moment, the 3 men simply lie in the snow, staring up at unfamiliar stars. No shouts of alarm, no bullets. A faint orange glow touches the horizon, dawn approaching over a different country. Ivan helps Yuri to his feet. His son's teeth chatter so violently he can't speak. But he's alive. They cross the border unseen. The question now, where exactly are they? A rustling sound makes them freeze. From behind a pine tree steps a figure in a wool coat and fur hat, an axe resting on his shoulder. A local woodcutter drawn by the commotion of 3 bodies crashing through ice. Boris raises his hands, showing empty palms. The stranger approaches cautiously and says something unintelligible. It takes Ivan a moment to place the language. Finnish. The man is asking if they need help. Ivan nearly collapses. He stammers the only Finnish word he knows. Suomi? Finland? The woodcutter's weathered face creases into a smile. He nods and replies with one word that erases 5 days of frozen hell. Finland. Laughter erupts from Ivan's chest, hoarse, raw, the laughter of a man who stole his life back from an empire. They're safe. Against every rational odd, they escaped the inescapable. It takes weeks for Ivan's frostbitten feet to heal in a Finnish hospital. But within days, the story spreads across Europe. Newspapers carry headlines about the Gulag Olympics escape, 3 Soviet prisoners who tricked their captors into training and supplying their own breakout. Back in the USSR, officials frantically scrub records and silence witnesses. The camp commandant is quietly relieved of duty, a scapegoat for an embarrassment that reached Stalin's desk. The man who signed Ivan's day pass, the same pass that unlocked the entire escape, vanishes into the Gulag system himself. Ivan Solonevich doesn't waste his second chance. Within months of reaching safety, he begins writing everything he witnessed in the camps. The result is Russia in Chains, a 600-page manuscript that tears open the Soviet myth for Western readers. For the first time, the world receives a first-hand account of Stalin's secret death machine, the starvation rations calculated to kill slowly, the frozen corpses stacked like lumber behind barracks, the production quotas that measured canal progress in cubic meters of earth and counted human lives as rounding errors. The book becomes an international sensation, translated into German, French, English, and a dozen other languages. Soviet propagandists scramble to discredit it, but Ivan has dates, names, locations, details that no amount of denial can erase. The Kremlin never forgave him. In 1938, 4 years after his escape, Soviet agents tracked Ivan to Sofia, Bulgaria, where he was living as an exile journalist. They planted a bomb in a package delivered to his home. The explosion killed his wife instantly and left Ivan with injuries that plagued him for years. But by then, the truth was already loose in the world, and no bomb could stuff it back into the silence the Soviets demanded. Ivan Solonevich pulled off one of history's most audacious escapes, not through violence or bribery, but by understanding a fundamental weakness in authoritarian systems. Their hunger for good optics will always outweigh their caution. The Soviet Union wanted to use Ivan's strength to build their canal. Instead, Ivan used their vanity to build his road to freedom. If you want to see another impossible escape from behind an iron curtain, watch the video on your screen, where a group of students dug 120 meters beneath the Berlin Wall and pulled 29 people to freedom right under the boots of East German guards. I'll see you there.